We have reached December. Welcome to Short Shifts, a part of the NHL Wraparound podcast. Vic Morren along with Neil Smith, and this is our first time recording in a week, Neil. And first off, you've got a new addition in the Smith household.
We certainly do. An 8-week-old female yellow lab named Sammy. She weighs 17 pounds. We had her at the vet this morning. And she makes even the vet melted when he saw her. So yeah, you can't not smile when you see this little guy.
And we are going to actually have her make an appearance on NHL Wraparound on Monday, the 9th. So we're certainly looking forward to that. So before the Thanksgiving holiday, we had said, we weren't going to do the regular wraparound Monday, a couple of short shifts this week, the next one coming up on Thursday. But there have been 49 games played in the NHL since we last spoke to our listeners and our viewers, and a few things that we see differently since the Thanksgiving holiday. Number one, the San Jose Sharks are not the worst team in the NHL, and for that matter, they're not even the worst team in the Western Conference.
You know what? They broke the bubble. They pierced the bubble with that first win. They finally got a win, and it seems like all of a sudden, they don't win every game, but they win one, lose one, win two, surprise somebody else. I mean, you wake up in the morning because of the time difference, and you look and you go, oh my God, San Jose beat them. So certainly they've turned some corner there, not a corner to make the playoffs, but they've turned a corner from dreadful to one of the rebuilding teams near the bottom, but not grossly at the bottom.
Ryan Warsofsky has done a really nice job with this club after they got off to a dreadful start. They have played well over 500 over the course of their last 15 or so games. Macklin, Celebrini, and Smith have some youth. They've gotten some good production from Tyler Toffoli. Mikael Granlund has also had a really good season to this point. So things generally looking up in San Jose.
It is, and that's good news for the league because San Jose is not it's not a hardcore hockey market. They got two teams there. They got the minor league team there, the Barracuda as well. And when San Jose is a playoff team, there's no better building to watch a game in. It's so much fun, and the people are really into it. So I'm glad. I want to see San Jose climb that standings again.
Number two, remember Sanford and Son?
Yes.
When Red Fox would hold his heart and say, Elizabeth, this is the big one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Here it comes. All right. You remember recently I had gotten on Trevor Zegras for his lackluster play in Anaheim, and he has since had a big uptick in play. The other player that I have been on constantly has been Pierre-Luc Dubois. And while I am not 100% sold that he's ever going to be worth what he's paid or he's ever going to have the value of where he was picked in the draft. He was a number 3 overall. He appears that he has found a home in Washington.
And I think Spencer Carberry has slotted him in correctly finally now because he gets drafted by Winnipeg. Their expectations are sky high. He gets traded to LA in a big major deal that Blake made there with Cheveldayoff, and he disappoints. It's to the point where they just want to get rid of him after 1 year, and they end up trading him to Washington for Darcy Kemper, who did win the Stanley Cup in Colorado a number of years ago. So, you know what? Maybe the Washington Capitals have found the right slot to put Dubois in to give him a satisfactory return in how he plays. And the expectations have been lowered for what you're going to get. The salary hasn't been lowered, and it's way too high for what he's producing. But I think the expectations have been tempered now.
And you had said that every GM thinks that they can find a disappointing player out there and perhaps get them into a situation where they are set up to succeed. And it appears that has happened here.
And you know what? It's exciting when you're either Chris Patrick or Brian McClellan, whoever did make that deal. It's exciting when you get a young player that you see something in. Adam Graves was that guy for me with the Rangers. He was being on a checking line on the Edmonton Oilers in 90-91. He had been on the kid line and won the cup in 90 with Edmonton, but he was on a checking line. His stats weren't good. His numbers weren't good. We signed him as a free agent with some compensation, and the rest is history. I mean, he became his number is retired at Madison Square Garden. So, I mean, it as a GM, yes, that's the one thing you want to do is how can I where is there a player that somebody's evaluated wrong that I can get and get the most out of.
And here was the sell point for me. I watched the Capitals game in New Jersey on Saturday, and Dubois is playing up against the top centers. He's producing a little bit now. He got his third goal of the season, which turned out to be the game winner. And something that was very striking to me was that when the Devils pulled their goalie for an extra skater at the end of the game, Capitals shot the puck down the ice, and he outskated Jack Hughes for a 50-50 puck to negate an icing. And to me, that is one of the big differences that I'm seeing. So let's see if he continues this uptick in his play, and pretty soon maybe I'll actually be calling him PL as he wants to be called right now. Number 3, if I told you that the Columbus Blue Jackets are one of only 3 teams that have scored at least 6 goals in a game at least 7 times this year, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd say if I hadn't been watching this season, I'd be saying you're nuts. There's no way that that's true, but it is true. And they have done it along with 2 other teams that have gotten off to great starts. Now, Columbus has gotten off to a great start for Columbus, but not off to a great start for the league, just for Columbus. But these other 2 teams, the Washington Capitals and the Winnipeg Jets, have been off to fantastic starts league-wide. So that's quite an accomplishment for Columbus, and especially because of what happened late in the summer with Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Gaudreau, and how they're I think they're using that as a rallying cry to grossly improve their play this year.
Here's another one for you. They are one of only 7 teams that have at least 10 players with at least 10 points this season. Dallas and Washington have 12 players. Carolina, Florida, Vegas, Winnipeg, and the Blue Jackets have 11 players with 10 points. So take a look at that group of teams that they are with right now. And Werenski, Marchenko, Sean Monahan is certainly playing very inspired. Sillinger, Chinnikov, Voronkov, Fantilli, Olivier, LeBlanc, Severson, and Kent Johnson, all with at least 10 points this year. And as you said, this is a great story and a team that has now created its own identity out of tragedy.
Yeah, and let's not forget Dean Evison being in there for his first season in there in Columbus. Don Waddell, of course, being in his first season there as the GM. It is a heartwarming story because of what happened with Johnny Gaudreau and what happened with that franchise over and over and over again since they've come in the league. They've been struck by bad luck and heartbreaking incidents. The goaltender who was killed by fireworks, sitting in a hot tub at a party, and other things that have happened. Nothing, and then the Johnny Gaudreau thing that the whole hockey world was mourning over that.
Yep, and we still do. And we're going to actually have more on that towards the end of the show as Columbus is in Calgary on Tuesday evening. All right. So what is still the same? What has not really changed over the course of the last several days from Thanksgiving? And number one, neither the Sabres, Red Wings, or Senators are showing any sign of being the next team in the Atlantic Division.
And you know what? You wondered, and they all are wondering, and their fan bases are wondering, who can we knock out of the playoffs that made the playoffs last year? And we're going to take their spot, much the same way as New Jersey, who missed last year, is taking somebody's spot. But it doesn't look, again, like the Buffalo Sabres or the Detroit Red Wings or the Ottawa Senators are going to be able to make a push hard enough to jump into one of those 8 spots. And let's face it, these 3 teams would be fighting for a wild card spot if they're going to make the playoffs.
No
it
question.
Doesn't look like they can make the wild card spot. You've also got the Islanders trying to get in again. You've also got the Boston Bruins with their terrible start, but at least they're hanging in there now. So it doesn't look good, and that's why it's still the same as after Thanksgiving as it was before.
I think one of the players the Sabres miss in particular, Sam Reinhart. So he's in the first year of a deal paying $8.625 million. He's following up on a 57-goal season with a league-leading 18 to this point, including 4 shorthanded goals. What a signing at a great number for the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, and, you mentioned it, a former Buffalo Sabre.
Yeah.
Jack Eichel is a former Buffalo Sabre. If they had Reinhart and Eichel, where would they
Ryan
be?
O'Reilly?
As an elder statesman, let's say.
Brandon Montour?
Yeah, I mean, yes, there's a number of them, and you wonder where the Sabres would be. Now, is it fair to do that? Because every team has guys that have left and gone to other teams. It's fair in this case because Eichel was their property. He was homegrown. Yeah. They drafted him first overall, and yet he got away. So good for Sam Reinhart, though. You know what I really like about Sam Reinhart is the fact that he signed a big deal like this and is playing harder than he did last year, if that's possible. He's playing really hard, killing penalties, power play, just a terrific player.
So all they need in addition to Barkov, another 200-foot player on the defending Stanley Cup champions.
That's right.
Number 3, the Seattle Kraken are just a point ahead of where they were a year ago, despite swapping out Dave Haxtell for Dan Bylsma.
And, Vic, we've watched all these different coaching moves over the years, and lately we should mention that in 2023, when Jim Montgomery won Coach of the Year, who came in second and who came in third?
Yeah.
Guess what? It was Haxtell second and Lindy Ruff came in third. All 3 of them fired by the teams that they were with. And what my point is here is that, is it really the coach when you fire him and the team doesn't do much better? Now, Rangers got rid of Gallant. Laviolette came in. They won the President's Trophy. So you can't argue with that. But as you said, Dave Haxtell gone, Dan Bylsma in. Not that much difference.
No. And as much as we tip our hat to the Kraken organization, they brought in Jessica Campbell as the assistant behind the bench to work on the power play. Numbers are numbers here, and the power play was 16th at 20.7 last season. It is 30th, entering play on Tuesday at only 15%. So sometimes the best moves are no moves, and perhaps Haxtell was actually hindered by having a great second season. And after the drop-off last year, Ron Francis thought it was time to make a move.
Yeah, and that so often can happen when there's a drop-off and the GM thinks that there shouldn't have been a drop-off, and he may start to interview the players on the exit interviews at the end of the season, or he may hear from some people that might be their problem. And, of course, the GM is trying to improve the team all the time and thinks that maybe the coaching change will improve it. Well, we haven't seen that since this season started, and that's why that is still the same as it was before Thanksgiving.
Yep. All right. We're going to change pace here a little bit, do something a little bit different. You and I have talked about it. A little bit of rapid fire, and we're going to do it kind of PTI style. Do not expect Smith and Morren to be Kornheiser and Wilbaum. We're not that polished, but nonetheless, we're going to go back and forth, 4 questions apiece. We're going to answer as quickly as we can and go through this. So, Neil, first question to you. Do the New York Rangers, who you just mentioned, fire their head coach, make a trade, or hold their course?
I think they'd be crazy to fire the coach. I don't know how they can make a big trade when most of their guys have no move clauses. I say they stay the course, and you're going to go through tough times in a season. Stick with your plan. Okay, so now I got one for you. Should Zach Werenski be in the Norris Trophy conversation?
I absolutely believe so. Finally, having a healthy season. He's third in defense and scoring. He had a 5-point game this year. He's got a nice little edge to his game. I'm all in on this guy. A lot of people are saying Cale Makar. Keep Werenski on your radar. Question for you. Why are the Washington Capitals the most positive surprise in the NHL thus far?
Well, I think that they certainly have improved their goaltending. They've got a great 1-2 punch there. And, I think that what Brian McClellan and Chris Patrick did this summer was they chipped away and they filled in a lot of spots where they had deficiencies. And I think they're better defensively. They play much better as a team and as a gang that just comes on so hard. I think that they're shockingly good. But let me ask you another one. Have the Toronto Maple Leafs, long time since they've had good goaltending, have they solved their goaltending problems?
I believe that they have, with Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll now healthy, and combined with a more defense-first mindset from head coach Craig Berube. I believe that the woes of the Toronto goaltending are behind them, and it is certainly showing in the standings with them leading with 32 points in the Atlantic Division. So, we just talked about the surprise of the Washington Capitals. Why are the Nashville Predators the single biggest disappointment thus far?
Barry Trotz went out and got the biggest fish on July 1st, and that was Steven Stamkos. He signed him. He signed several other players that were high-profile, high-salaried players that came in, but they were older players, and the whole thing just hasn't clicked. It just hasn't worked for them. And why exactly are they the most disappointing? Because they spent the most money in the summer, and everybody thought, oh, they made the playoffs last year by the skin of their teeth. They're going for it this year. Well, they might be going for the number 1 pick if they don't get going better than this. All right, and your question from me, how about Macklin Celebrini? Do you think he's a better rookie at this point this year than Connor Bedard was at this point last year?
I think slightly. I like his presence on the ice. We got to remember that Celebrini this year, Bedard last year, both missed time due to injuries. I do believe that Celebrini's supporting cast is a little bit better this year than Bedard's was last year, but just his overall presence on the ice, and he seems like he's got a command that's just a little bit different and a little bit more evolved than Bedard's is. By the way, mentioned Bedard's play slacking off probably about a week or so ago, and his play has improved as well. So certainly promise for both teams, San Jose with Celebrini and Bedard in Chicago. Last question for you. If Filip Hronek with a possible broken collarbone in a hit suffered last Wednesday in Pittsburgh. If he's gone long-term, does this force the hand of Patrick Alvin to make a deal in Vancouver?
I think it does. If he's gone long-term, I think they've got to go out and they've got to find another defenseman so they get their depth even deeper. Because if they lose one more, they're really in trouble. And by the way, Vancouver's not having that great of a start to their season. I don't think they're going to be in tough if they don't get going a lot better. They're going to be one of the teams that's going to have to fight for a wild card spot. So, yeah, I think Patrick Alvin, the general manager of the Vancouver Canucks, has to go out and find another defenseman. So, I know you like the Philadelphia Flyers as a team. You're not a fan, but you like them as a team. Yeah. I know you watch all their games. Can you make a case for Matvei Michkov to win the Calder?
Why not? 3 overtime goals, and more than anything else, he's a player that's got a little bit of an edge. He gives the Flyers a presence and a dynamic that they haven't had in the last few seasons. And when he was benched by John Tortorella, as opposed to pouting or not coming out with as much fire, the motivation that Tortorella was trying to deliver in his message has worked. Does he make some, fancy plays, ill-advised plays? Yes, but he's also a rookie. And the truth of the matter is, you get to overtime, you got to watch this guy every single second that he's on the ice. So that wraps up our rapid fire. And I think this was fun, and we're going to try it again at some point.
Yeah, we got it. It is fun, and it'll get better.
Wow, I thought our answers were terrific.
No, they were terrific, but it's going to get more fun and more fun. That's what I meant. More fun to listen to. And the people out there can say, "Oh, you guys are full of it." There's no way that Michkov is even close to a Calder trophy. And they can say,
that's why we have the discussions, because everybody's got their own opinion, and that's why we're here. So some player and league notes. Alex Ovechkin skated before the Capitals practice on Monday in a tracksuit and a stick, no hockey gear. He was injured back on November the 18th. No timetable for his return. Nikolai Ehlers of Winnipeg, lower body injury, missed the Jets' loss in Dallas on Sunday. He's day-to-day and on IR, retroactive to November 29th. Maverick Lamoureux of the Utah Hockey Club, defenseman, upper body injury on November 26th at Montreal. He's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. From Colorado, Miles Wood, upper body injury out month to month. He missed 7 games earlier in the season. Josh Manson and Oliver Shillington are out week to week. Good news, Ross Colton, out with a broken foot, will travel on the Avs 5-game road trip, but not expected to play against Buffalo on Tuesday. Cam Talbot of Detroit left Sunday's game with Vancouver, lower body injury. And Patrick Kane, upper body injury, is on IR. He will miss his 5th straight game when the Red Wings are in Boston on Tuesday, but can come off IR at any time. A couple of returns here. Patrick Laine will play his first game of the season, reported by TSN on Tuesday morning. He will play against the New York Islanders, and he skated with Kirby Dach and Slavkovsky, so a much-needed boost for the Montreal offense. Pyotr Kochetkov of Carolina may return against Seattle on Tuesday after missing 4 games with a concussion. And, Neil, I'm going to bring you back in here. A little goalie swap between Nashville and Colorado. Justus Annunen, who had a couple of good games and then struggled again with the Avalanche, goes to the Predators for Scott Wedgwood. What's your take?
My take is, and I don't have any inside information, but it would seem to me that when you do a move like this, Scott Wedgwood was really good last year for Dallas when he had to play. Obviously, Ottinger is their number one guy. For some reason, he goes into Nashville and it doesn't work. Now, this hasn't been their problem this year, but it may be one of a gazillion problems they're having. My guess is that Saros would like it if there was a young Finn as his backup, since he is Finnish. it seems maybe that would work better, because the goalies, the number one and number two, have to really like each other. It doesn't work if they don't like each other. If the guy's sitting on the bench hoping you let goals in so that he can get into the net, it doesn't work. And I'm not saying that's what was going on there, but my guess is that Colorado needs to improve their goaltending. I think they made a good deal there by trading Annunen for Wedgwood.
But Wedgwood's never played more than 32 games in a season, so somebody's got to step up. Is it going to be Georgiev, or is Wedgwood going to step into a role that he has never really been before, and that is as a true number one?
Right, and I think the organization there is going to keep pushing and coaching and doing whatever they can to make Georgiev come back to life and grab onto that number one spot. He's had a few real good outings lately, so he's much better than how the year started.
Also, a trade between the Columbus Blue Jackets and Minnesota Wild. David Jiricek, defenseman and former 6th overall pick for the Blue Jackets in 2022, sent to Minnesota for 4 picks and defenseman Damon Hunt. And the Blue Jackets now have 27 draft picks in the next 3 seasons. And you can never have enough draft picks because either you draft or they're bargaining chips. And this is a real good spot that Columbus is putting themselves into.
Yeah, Don Waddell has put himself in a good spot by picking up more picks. And I did the draft for many, many years for not only Detroit, but then also when I was with the Rangers. And I always had the theory that the more spaghetti you can throw at the wall, the more will stick on the wall. And, when you're getting past the first round these days, you're out there and you're trying your best to find a needle in a haystack. And, but the more needles the more haystacks you have, the better chance you have of finding that needle.
Yep. Well, this is clearly a good change for Jiricek. He had only played 6 games for Columbus this season and then was sent to the American Hockey League on November 20th. Hey, how about this one? Kevin Lankinen in the overtime win for the Canucks against Detroit on Sunday becomes the first goalie in NHL history to start 10-0 on the road. And Jake DeBrusk finished that game with a hat trick and the game-winning goal in overtime. So hats off to Lankinen.
Hats off to Lankinen and hats off to DeBrusk.
All right. So perhaps, Neil, you lit a fire under the NHL here, because on our show on July the 5th, where we talked about free agency and the draft, but particularly with free agents, and we raised the issue of tampering. And you believe that it was rampant simply because as soon as 1201 hit, you had all of these deals that were coming down, and theoretically, teams aren't even supposed to talk to players until noon of July 1st. So the new fines that are being proposed are for teams up to a $5 million fine, termination of any contract signed, forfeiture of draft picks, and awarding of draft picks and or cash to the offended club. And if a player buys into the tampering, up to a $1 million fine and possible suspension or expulsion. So elaborate on how you see this potentially changing the landscape.
Well, I think you're going to cover your tracks very, very well now. And you can't be silly and announce that you've signed, a player at 10 after 12 on July 1st and think that, you can really convince people that you did all the negotiating in 10 minutes.
Right.
Obviously, you were talking to his agent, or you were talking to the player, or you had somebody talk to the agent, or somebody talk to the player. Now, the problem's going to be, Vic, is that the NHL has no right to interview the agents, and they can't put them under oath. Mm-hmm. They can do that with the players and so on. and they can do that with certainly with team execs, team scouts, and things like that. But proving the tampering has always been hard. Now they've done it in the past. I remember St. Louis, New Jersey, there was a tampering charge that got years after the tampering took place. I think it was Gary Bettman who awarded to New Jersey a draft pick from St. Louis, and I can't remember what that was in reference to, but you got to be smart now. I mean, they can't be doing this stuff and announcing it quickly. If you are cheating or tampering, you tell the player, look, we're not signing you till 3:00. Like, I don't care. But it would scare me if I was a team. If I was a GM, I'd be scared mostly of the forfeiture of draft picks. That would really scare me.
It seems that when we get to July 1st of 2025, this is going to take on a life of its own. And who is actually going to be the first team to announce a free agent signing? Is it going to be 2 or 3 hours later? And of course, there's also the media component of people, breaking news and things of that. So this is going to have a borderline circus atmosphere to it.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head there too, because again, what about if an agent or somebody that works with the agent or somebody in the family of the player leaks it to the press? Yep. Oh, well, he's going to so-and-so. And, so this will be interesting to see what happens. But there definitely was tampering going on. The GMs that I were talking to, said it was crazy how much tampering there was.
Stay tuned. So, hey, before we wrap up, great celebration Sunday afternoon in Boston. The Bruins celebrated their 100th anniversary with a 6-3 win over Montreal, a game that they put away really early. They had beat the Montreal Maroons on that same date in 1924. And before the game, 5 generations of Bruin players or relatives of some of the earliest Bruins, such as Eddie Shore and Dit Clapper, they took part in the festivities. Bobby Orr, Phil Esposito, Rick Middleton, Terry O'Reilly, Patrice Bergeron, Willie O'Ree all took part, and the pregame puck drop was with Johnny Busick, former Bruins captain, and Ken Dryden representing Montreal. And I got to say this, that, the video, the still shots were absolutely terrific. And of all the original 6 clubs, nobody has done a better job documenting their history by the Bruins. And it all came out on Sunday.
Yeah, that was a fantastic show they put on for their fans, and Boston Bruins do a good job of celebrating their history. I think personally that Montreal does the best of all teams, but I love the fact that the Bruins do such a great job. I think the Red Wings do a pretty good job. I think the Blackhawks do an okay job, and the Rangers, I don't even know if they try. So, but it's certainly the Bruins do a great job, and you should celebrate your history. It's a great history that the Bruins have.
Yeah. And it was just it was a wonderful event to watch, about 20 minutes long, and just you got a great feeling of just the generations being joined, and all of the older Bruins actually passed the puck to a bunch of young players, kind of like the way in Montreal they passed the torch. So that was just great stuff. So we're back on Thursday. What are we looking for in terms of games on Tuesday and Wednesday evenings? And from my perspective, Calgary is hosting Columbus. Guy Gaudreau, the father of the late Johnny and Matthew, skated with the Flames, similar to the way he had skated with the Blue Jackets and the Flyers earlier this season. It's going to be a very emotional ceremony out there, as Calgary was the home for Gaudreau for many years before he signed with the Blue Jackets. I'm also looking at Detroit and Boston to see if Maybe Detroit can make some sort of statement in trying to push the Bruins out of that fourth position in the Atlantic Division. And Edmonton and Vegas, if for no other reason, it should be a great offensive watch. And the Golden Knights coming off a real good whooping at the hands of the Utah Hockey Club.
Unreal, wasn't it? I mean, that was who would have ever thunk it in Vegas? Utah spanks them 6-0.
Yep. Also, Wednesday, the rosters for the Four Nations face-off will be announced. Sweden and Finland during the afternoon, Canada and the U.S. during the evening. And just what you're feeling on this, that I think as hockey fans, we all look forward to these best-on-best competitions, but I'm not feeling the buzz down in the States yet. And I think maybe because we watch so much hockey from TSN and Rogers in Canada and the NHL Network, that a lot of the buzz has just been generated through television thus far. And I'm not feeling it in the States yet. How about you?
No, I'm not either. And I certainly don't have it myself. I go to a lot of games and I don't feel it either. This is not the Olympics. This is maybe better than an all-star game. Well, certainly anything's better than the all-star games the way they are lately. But everybody loves to see these kind of things. But I'll tell you who doesn't love them: the general managers. Because if your guy gets hurt in the Four Nation tournament, you are pissed.
Yeah.
So let's hope nobody gets hurt. But it's hard to believe that there won't be one injury. I mean, I think there will be somebody will get hurt.
Well, to your point, yeah, they're not playing this like an all-star game. These guys are playing for their nations, and once that puck is dropped, everybody's going to be all in on this thing. And to think that they are going to go scot-free with no injuries, I think it'd be sadly mistaken to make that, to make that kind of statement. And to your point, Olympics, this kind of tournament, anything mid-season, it certainly runs a risk, doesn't it?
It sure does. And one other thing that I want to say about Wednesday night is an interesting game will be, it's on TNT, Dallas at LA. We're going to find out about LA. Are they definitely in the playoffs, or are they fighting for a wild card spot? Where are they? And I'm intrigued because I don't know where they are. But in watching their games and in watching the results, and they're a team that you really don't know how they're going to play from night to night. So Dallas is a real good team. It's a conference game. Let's see what happens in that one.
We're going to be back on Thursday to talk about it. So that will wrap up Short Shifts for this afternoon. And on behalf of Neil, we look forward to speaking with you again in a couple of days.